Battery's probably going bad.
We seem to have issues with batteries, don't we? Well, before I start the meeting, I will just remind all the members that we have these new microphones. And in the very middle of the microphone, there's a button that says push. Make sure that green light is on before you speak. We had it set up so that one of the old microphones that we had, we kept, and it's basically a floater that can, we can use out there. We've got this one, and then we've got a handheld also. So it's close enough. 7 o'clock. We'll call this meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, approval of the agenda. I have a couple of items that I'd like to add. RSU 21 Board of Directors meeting update, and also the planning board meeting of last week. I'd like to add that on there. February 7th planning board.
I have an item too. Like to get some signatures on the RSU 21 warrant. They've sent the paperwork over, and I'll put that under business just after road postings.
Okay. Looking for a motion to accept as amended.
So move.
Motion by Jason.
Second.
Seconded by Velma. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay, the next item on the agenda is public forum. This is, well, this mic here, this one is trouble because of the two speakers, but we'll figure it out. Next item on the agenda is a public forum where we'll take any comments from the public on non-agenda items. If you want to make a comment, please step up, turn the mic on, introduce yourself, and we'll hear what you get to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm on. I live in Clearview Estates, 35 years. I moved up there because it was a enclosed development. We can see what we're gonna get. This new development coming in is really gonna destroy it. They're gonna have tons of trucks, big ones filled with sand and gravel and everything like that, going down there constantly, picking up stuff, bringing it back. They're gonna bring in bulldozers and backhoes. And the worst one is gonna be the cement mixers. And we just had the roads fixed the other day, and I think it's going to do a hell of a job on the road. It's not designed for that kind of heavy traffic. And then the amount of traffic going up there too is a lot. You got kids over there riding their bikes in the street and stuff like that. And with all these trucks coming, these kids don't look. Well, we frequently have to stop, let the kids out, get by us, and that's going to be real dangerous up there. Oh, and walking. Well, a lot of us walk in the daytime or right after they get out of work. And if there's a big truck coming and a car coming the other way, if you're on Maplewood, there's 2 ditches on both sides. They're not going to stop for you. They're going to go by you and you can touch them. It could be a big safety factor. And I was told that Thomas, the developer, says there's a plan B or another place they can put the road. It comes back out on the Bridgestone Road. And he says, we're not going there because it costs more. So why put all of us in danger, destroy our road and our privacy when they go to the Bridgestone Road? If it's a matter of money, selling those houses for $700,000 each. Then there's the salt water. A lot of people up there have to hit salt water in their wells. So I don't know how they're going to do it. Thank you.
Sir, your name again?
George LeBrecq.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Hi, Sharon Bennett. I live at 155 Maplewood Drive. I also have a lot of concern. I live at the four-way stop, and there's a lot of traffic that goes by. Even our own neighbors pass through the stop sign, and that's a safety issue. Neighbors, I don't have any small children, but my grandchildren visit and ride their bikes in the road. And I also agree with George that it's a safety hazard. You have paved our road a couple times. Unfortunately, you pave over cracked roads, so it cracks again. But if you go down where I am, if you go through the development by the golf course and you go up and into the development and you take that right, if you go down that road, the road is already cracked now. And to have all that heavy equipment continuously going through, it's really gonna destroy our roads. I have an issue with the development as well. If he is willing to keep the aesthetics of our neighborhood the way it is currently, I don't have a problem with him adding a few homes. The problem that I do have is adding condos and multifamilies. What's that going to do to the value of our homes? I have been there for 34 years. I love my home, and this is really going to force me to possibly consider moving, and I don't want to move. And a lot of neighbors are really concerned. We do have a lot of kids that are out in the roads, people walking all the time. And as George says, if you have 2 construction trucks coming through that neighborhood, it's going to be close. If somebody's walking on the side of, they'll have to basically jump almost in the ditch, per se. I really have some concerns about doing the road to go into the new development from our development. And I agree with George, if there was another access road that they could do, I guess I would be okay with it. But, you know, what's the value going to be to my home? Is it going to bring it up? Is it going to bring it down? I don't know. I'm not happy at all. And it's hard because I'm friendly with the family, you know, so, but that's just some of the concerns I have. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah.
I got one of these at work. Don't worry. Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Wow, microphones always make me feel super weird, but my name's Paul Santamore. I've lived in Arundel for just about 5 years now, and I loved every second of it so far. I live at 175 Maplewood Drive, so when you come in the neighborhood and you go to the four-way stop, you turn right where the new development proposed will be. Down at the end, I'm the first house on your left. I can sit up on a little knoll, so my daughter rides her bike down the driveway, and we already got to be pretty careful with oncoming traffic, right, as people speed up. You know, I share all the same concerns these folks do, and, you know, especially in reference to my daughter and my next daughter that's coming in May. So that's exciting. But I think the 2 things I wanted to address for folks in my neighborhood, we have a collection of about 40 houses on an email chain, just sharing thoughts, trying to organize a little bit. I think it's in opposition, but also just to make sure our voices are heard. I emailed with Dan a little bit, and people just want to make sure things are done correctly, right, to the code and the ordinance. But also that we have, you know, a chance to be heard. I know we will in public comment sessions, but my first, you know, question or thought, I don't know how much you guys can engage at this point. Or do you just have to hear the comment?
Right.
Okay, so there'll be comments then. I think a explanation of the planning board process and how individuals can engage and have their voices and concerns heard might be helpful. I think we can ask that of the planning board, but also to engage with you guys. You're the select board for a reason, right? And I think we trust you guys and elect you in office for a reason. So, and then the second, you know, question or thought is how folks like me can go about advocating, you know, and is there kind of any possibility of our voices impacting the development itself, right? Or does the planning board really just interact with the builder developer? So I think some public education on that. I mean, I'm doing my own research, but just to be shared with townspeople might be beneficial. Those are my thoughts at this point. So thank you.
So I mean, we normally have a policy of, we just kind of listen to what the comments are and we move on, but I think, this kind of warrants some sort of comments back from the board. I will state my comments. You asked, how your voices are to be heard. Obviously, what the meeting and I'll discuss this a little bit later on in our meetings, but what happened at the planning board meeting was, it was really just a sketch plan review where somebody comes over, they'll bring up their plans and the planning board kind of looks at it, discusses it. And it's really between the applicant and the planning board, the planner and the planning board. Once they submit an application, then at that point is when it comes to the planning board, that's when you folks of the public will have your opportunities to voice your opinions, voice your concerns. The reality of it is if they meet the ordinance, there's going to be a lot of, hard things that might not be able to be changed if they meet the ordinance. And that's what the planning board is there for, to make sure that the ordinance is followed and, that everything is correct to the ordinance. Not to say that you don't have a voice. If you folks certainly do have a voice, and I encourage you folks to be at those meetings when it does come up, and as civil as possible. Get everything together and kind of voice your opinions. The public normally does have a say. I mean, there have been developments in this town where concerned residents have voiced their opinions and developers have made changes to help appease the neighbors. It all depends on the applicant and his or her willingness to do that. So again, I encourage you folks to really be to voice your concerns. I don't know if Tom, Phil, Jason, anybody else wants to make other comments, but feel free.
For the planning board right now.
Yeah,
Just
so
started the process.
yeah, it just went through a sketch plan review on Tuesday. It's a development towards the end of Clearview Estates, going into the golf course. They'll be open. You'll be able to see these homes from the golf course side. That's their plan. That cul-de-sac. What's the name of that road where the cul-de-sac is? So on Maplewood Drive, down at the very bottom, there's a cul-de-sac there. It's off of that cul-de-sac. Where Michael Thomas owns a piece of property. Right away is through his property, and then he's looking at putting some development in there. So
You folks should understand, this board doesn't have a whole lot of jurisdiction with respect to land use issues. That's the planning board's job. And the voters, if they were to change the ordinance. So we don't have a lot to offer in terms of assisting you in your opposition. But if you have, what did you say, 40 people on communicating, bring the crowds to the planning board hearings. That's what it takes.
Yep. Okay. Yes, sir. Step on up.
If I understood right, they're gonna have a half-acre lots.
Yep.
And like George LeBrecq again. It's my understanding that it sounds like they're gonna be half-acre lots. Is that true?
It could be, and that's allowed as long as they meet the density for open space. That's allowed, but they still gotta fit their well. They gotta fit their septic. So if it fits and they can make it work per the requirements that are there, it's allowed.
Well, he also said the house will be like $800,000. If you were paying $8,000 for a house, you want a half acre or 5 or 10 acres. Don't make no sense.
Yeah, I mean, some people on a golf course don't care, right? They might say, hey, I've got golf course property. This is a piece of, I don't know. I'm just speculating, right? But, there's, and if he builds those houses and nobody buys them, good for you guys, because you don't get the traffic.
Yeah, well, we're still gonna lose our roads, all those heavy vehicles. Why chance it? If it does go through, what kind of timeline are we set? What kind of timeline before they start?
We can't answer that. That's something that you'd have to go to the planning board. Like Tom said, we have no jurisdiction. Well, I'll update the board tonight on what went on at the meeting, but basically, they're, you know, they do their stuff and we do our stuff, so, you know, I certainly appreciate input from you folks and.
That helps clarify. I appreciate
Anything else from the public? All right, moving forward. Approval of the January 9th, 2022 minutes.
I didn't see a problem with that. I make a motion, we approve those minutes.
Motion by Velma to approve,
Second.
seconded by Tom. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Yes. Okay, committee and board reports. I'll start with the Monday, February 6th meeting for RSU 21 Board of Directors. Well, we may have to turn this one down a little bit.
Oh, I think,
Yeah, turn.
I think if folks turn their mics off when they're not using them, we'll get rid of that.
Yep, we will. Just remember to turn it on when you speak, please. Okay, let's see. Meeting was called to order at 6 p.m. Recognition reports, they approved a handful of minutes. There was approval of a year-long halftime sabbatical leave for Lori Curtis, KHS teacher. There's a nomination of Tara Pullen, 0.5 social worker for elementary. I did not get a salary for her. And there was approval of an overnight trip for the Alpine Class A State Championship, Kennebunk High School. Superintendent's report. Talked a little bit about what's called a family university. There was 4 different strands, and there was one that they did on February 5th, which was health and awareness, and these are efforts with the community to help support students. There was also an update by Brooke Hunt on the fall TNTP report. This is, if you recall, talked about a survey where they surveyed teachers, students, staff, parents, and you know, overall the survey results kind of showed good, but it looks like there's some holes in some of that. I know Jack had some concern with some of that. I've got the report. I'm just out of curiosity going to be looking at the report just to see what's there. But the information that they shared looked like the survey results seemed to be in a little bit more of a positive note. Superintendent talked about snow days. So the state requires 175 school days. RSU 21 sets up a school calendar of 179 days. So they put in 4 days there to for snow days. So far we've had 3 snow days. And at the current level, the last day of school is June 15th. If they have 1 more snow day, the last day of school will be June 16th. And then after that, she has contingency plans if they have 6, 7 days. And those plans include blizzard bags or, you know, a few of those items. So she kind of rolled that plan out. Art gave an update on finance. There was a meeting with the town managers. And you're going to talk about that tonight, right? Did you say you were going to talk about that?
I'm going to talk a little bit about, the regional efforts that we discussed at that meeting. Yes.
Yeah, okay. You know, he talked a little bit about the ESSER fundings. Amanda gave an update on communications. They're looking at a preamble to some public comments, how public comments are handled. An update on facilities, on upcoming budget discussions. There were a few delays to the sports complex and the courtyard. There was some damage to the fields. Somebody had driven on the fields and done some damage to the fields. They also talked about that they created a warming shelter for when there was a power outage, and that was pretty well received. A couple of policies that were enacted or first readings. And there was one, administer medication to students, that had brought up some discussions. The changes to that was the addition of Narcan, but there was also a discussion on other rescue type medicines, glucose guns and what have you, and how that's going to be added. So they're going to look at that stuff for the second reading, try to add those in there. Budget validation is June 13th. And they talked about the bus usage alignment plan. So they have plans set up for the overturn of buses. And right now the RSU has 43 buses, 41 are used. They have 2 extra ones, spare ones to use for, you know, a bus goes down or what have you. And when COVID hit, it kind of messed up. So what they do is they look at how old the buses are and the mileage. And when COVID hit, that mileage was, you know, stopped. So now the mileages are off on these. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to rearrange some of the routes for the bus, not rearrange, but change some buses around to try to get the mileage up. Now they may take bus 12 and put a placard over it. Now this is bus 9 or what have you, just to try to get the mileage up so it meets the requirement when it's time to replace it. So he talked a little bit about that. He did talk about Wells. I don't know if you've heard, but Wells is getting 11 electric buses. And they kind of figured that they'll sit back, watch, see how that works before jumping in to see if electric buses are the right way to go. So, and then they broke at 9:01 p.m. to go into executive session. There's that. Any questions, comments? Next item is the planning board meeting for February 7th. 3 items on the agenda. The first one was DuBois Automobile Salvage conditional use renewal. This was a proposal to renew their conditional use permit for an existing 8,500 square foot automobile salvage area. That was discussed by the board, and they set a 2/21 date for a public hearing. Next item was Bentley's Campground. Bentley's Campground is going through some expansion phases, and the board had asked them a while back to look at traffic patterns and, you know, traffic counts. So they had, I didn't get the individual's name, but they had a guy come in, sit there and, you know, count vehicles coming in, going to the campground, going, you know, the campground road into Bentley's, there's a saloon and back and forth. And all of those numbers pretty much met the requirements. That was okay. They will be coming back to the board due to some stormwater management. They're going to be changing a few things around, some retention ponds, and that's going to shrink they're going to shrink the total number of campsites. So they're going to come back to the board for that. The next item was a new application. That was Michael Thomas Major Subdivision Sketch Plan. I will tell you that's the most people I've ever seen at a planning board meeting. There was a bunch of chairs here. The chairs were all filled, and we had standing room only in the back. The chairs were locked in the closet, so couldn't get. But there was a lot of people in here to discuss that. Well, been discussed, but to listen in on what the proposal was. So the proposal is to develop a 27.2 acre parcel with 12 to 16 lots consisting of single family, duplex, and multi-unit structures. The owner of the property is Dutch Elm, and the applicant is Michael Thomas. So they're kind of working together to kind of put that. So it was a sketch plan, a lot of comments from the board. There were some comments from the public, and then they kind of gave some direction to Michael Thomas and company, and we'll end up seeing that back on a planning board. Last item was the town planners report. They didn't discuss this because at that point, I don't know, I think it was after 9 o'clock. I don't remember the time, but they ended up adjourning the meeting. But I would like to make one comment to the town manager. Is they had review and vote on amended language to the bylaws. None of that was posted online. So if somebody wanted to come in and look at this stuff, as I tried to look at that, none of it was posted online. All the other stuff was online, but if somebody had to question this, they would know. There weren't extra copies that were here. So to me, any of that stuff in today's world, that stuff should be posted online. Anything that they're gonna discuss, the public ought to have the right to take a quick look at that stuff before it comes, so. Okay. And that's all my reports. Okay. Moving on to managers report.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just a reminder that your TIF capture cost meeting with your volunteer group is Wednesday, this Wednesday coming up at 7 o'clock here in the meeting room. As I understand, we'll be trying to focus down on the comments and suggestions that were made at the last meeting to try to focus down as to what really pertains or what we really want to focus in on in terms of what those project cost monies will be used for. We'll see how that meeting goes. I expect that these TIF cost things, as we talked before, will be a little bit longer in duration in terms of when we're ready to bring that forward to the legislative body for voting. So we've got plenty of time to work on it and to get a better understanding of it as we move through.
Good. I forgot all about the last meeting. It just snuck up on me and forgot all about it, but I'll be there Wednesday.
That's fine. I'm sure your colleagues will give you a hard time over it. Just to give you a reminder, we are ready to start working on the budget. I'm planning on Wednesday, the 22nd at 7 o'clock to begin our process. I've got most of the budgets done. There are a couple capital things that we're still working on. And the limiting factor I have right now is I've reached out to Casella on a number of occasions to try to narrow down specifically what they're looking for us to do in the next budget cycle. They've had some employee turnover, and I was informed that they have another representative for our area, and Dave Allen, who I had met with last year, indicated that the new gentleman will be contacting me shortly. So I'm hopeful to have some information that I can share with you folks as we go through the process. The ADE, Rule 80E warrant inspection for 159 Proctor Road is in the works now. I spoke with Attorney Plant. He's putting together a summary document for me to review. It's supposed to be in my hands sometime this week. We will then go through the process of getting that in front of the court. Tom probably has a better idea of when the court's going to hear our cases, but I'm not sure they've caught up at all at this point. So we may be a while before we get there, but we are proceeding cautiously on that. Several weeks ago, I met via Zoom with a finance committee for RSU 21. We had the managers or representatives from both Kennebunk and Kennebunkport were also represented at this meeting, and the efforts that the finance committee wished to partake in is to try to begin to focus on expenditures that are like expenditures between the municipalities and the school districts in the hopes that we could garner some savings for the taxpayers and not only all the communities, but for the school in general. So I think right now they asked some general questions. Some of the towns, particularly in Kennebunk, I think they do some plowing and sanding for their parking areas at the school, or to at least help them out. We also talked about, I mentioned, office equipment, copy machines and paper and things like that may be a very easy catch for us to get involved in. on those particular aspects. So I think it's going to be a case by case basis. I think one of the things that the RSU, particularly the finance folks, didn't understand is that there are already some non-written relationships between both Kennebunkport, and Arundel. Case in point for us would be our efforts through our public works departments. We've shared and borrowed equipment amongst all the departments. When there are major road projects that may be between two communities, we sort of put our forces together to make sure those projects got completed. I remember very recently some road sealing that we had done that took place in both communities. And these things are unwritten relationships that we've had for a long time. So one that comes to mind right now, because we don't have a full-time mechanic on staff yet, is that Kennebunkport's mechanic has assisted us on the days that he's not working to come up and work on the larger equipment that perhaps takes a little more expertise to complete. So those things are happening, and we'll continue to try to have those conversations with them and see if we can make more efforts in that regard. Speaking of, before I move on to the next subject, speaking of public works, just to let you know that the Mack truck that we had refurbished, the new frame, it was down to Champions to be undercoated. Be back and the final pieces of the puzzle be put together, and we're confident to have that up and running here shortly. So long process, but getting there.
Keith, the employee from Kennebunkport that helps out, we pay him, right?
We do. He's on our payroll as a part-time employee. The other thing that's come to fruition with the hiring of our 2 full-time firefighters at the fire department, and the fact that we already had 1 full-timer, the need for space has sort of expanded to the point where it's sort of pushed the York County Sheriff's Department out of an area to really stop in, do their paperwork, maybe do local interviews, so on and so forth. So the department, the sheriff's office, reached out to us to see if there was space here available to at least give them an area to work out of. I think we found an area near the land use office. Right now we have one of those huge plotters in the corner that's been in the town's ownership for many, many years. And I've been here, going on almost 6 years now, 7 years, and we've never used it. So I think we're going to get the plotter moved out, and there's a nice location there where we can put up a small wall and a door and give them a small office space so they can conduct interviews and do their paperwork. They're looking to get their IT folks down here to ensure that they have a secured IT address so they can do their paperwork. The other alternative, which was highly objectionable to me, was that the sheriff's department was going to go to Kennebunk to do their paperwork. And I'm opposed to that. I think in this building, we can find a spot for them to be. We'll give them security cards that they can come in at any time with the coded numbers, and give them a place to stay. So
Couldn't we, if we needed to, go upstairs?
that was our first alternative, but they didn't need a large space, and it would have been not only securing the door, but also providing larger expense for them. The expenses to put this wall up and the new door are going to be incurred by the sheriff's office. From what I understand, they'll have some very talented prisoners come down to do some of this work for them. And I'm sure that it'll be done well. It'll be what we're accustomed to in the building now, I'm sure. The last thing I had was recently there's a bill proposed. I didn't understand this till I read it more. Is that right now military vehicles that are purchased by folks other than municipalities cannot be registered on the road. This is I believe it's part of the law as it presently exists, and the Secretary of State's office is exercising their jurisdiction to ensure that those items aren't registered. So anybody who's had one registered has been given notice. It doesn't actually affect us right now, but I'm fearful that with the abundance of military vehicles we have in our fleet, that eventually it may resurface and include governmental entities. Right now, it would impact us with the sale of any of those items. If we took them to auction, they'd have to be sold at for off-road purposes only to anybody other than a government entity. And it takes away from the ability of us to utilize equipment that really is in very good shape and still got quite a bit of use in it. So we prefer to continue to have those relationships with the state surplus. The other limiting factor that I saw in the bill was that anything above anything 10,000 pounds or below of gross vehicle weight could be registered at some point. That 10,000 pounds is pretty limited. We have a 10-wheel dump truck that is well over 10,000 pounds without any freight in it, as I'm sure Phil can attest to. So that would have, that could perhaps have an impact with us. I reached out to Senator Ingridson and Representative Perry. Representative Perry's on the transfer committee, and voiced my concerns, and both of them asked me to provide some sort of written testimony to the committee once the committee begins to discuss that item, which I will do. But it was something that came up late, and we sort of got into it, and hopefully the legislature, when they do finally go through the bill, particularly Transportation Committee, they may make some modifications to it that may be appropriate for everyone.
But that bill is to allow registration, right? The new bill that's LD 369 is to allow registration.
That is correct. Right now, the law indicates that you can't register them. And I guess there have been a variety of municipalities that have registered these vehicles.
But municipalities are okay.
But I think there's been some private folks that have bought these, registered them, now have found out that those registrations aren't valid and have been told to return them. So I think the bill that's being submitted by Senator Liberty tries to address that concern at this point.
Okay, moving on to business. Looks like everything else, rates are going up, huh?
Yes, we were contacted by a town attorney who indicated to us that they would like to increase our rates by 5% on our regular general review of any of our laws or any work they're doing for us. Right now we pay $200 an hour, so it would be going to $210 an hour. There'd also be an increase for the paralegal services by 5%. And then the specialty items, if we need to hire somebody who has educational expertise or somebody else within in the firm, they would get their regular rate. So unless I hear strong objections, I would prefer to maybe have a vote that we're okay with the increase of 5% on the general legal hourly rate of $200 to $210.
How is our line item look in the legal?
A line item's looking fine. I think we had 30,000 in it. I think we've spent, I want to say around 20 at this point. And that was primarily for a variety of issues that we had that popped up, particularly Proctor Road that took a big hit. But during my budget presentation to you folks next Wednesday, is I'm going to increase that line item by 5%. I think it'll be appropriate at this point. I think we're sort of calming down our legal expenses to date, and a little healthier balance for us moving forward.
Okay. Looking for a motion to approve the 5% general legal rate increase.
I'll second that.
Motion by
It's
Jason.
exceedingly reasonable, folks. Mhm.
Is it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good. Motion by Jason, seconded by Tom. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Next item is road postings.
Yes, I provided you a list of, and it's a general list that we have every year of road postings for those roads that we always post in the event that during the springtime that the frost coming out of the ground would destroy these roads if we don't post them. So you have the list there. And then you also have a list of the roads that we do not post. So you have an idea of what we do generally. At the bottom of the road posting list, it says the posting date would be February 27th. And what I would like to do, and I talked to Roger today, is to leave that up to us moving forward instead of setting the February 27th date as a posting, because this week we're going to get up to 50 degrees. And that we may be a little more premature in terms of posting than we have been in the past. So we'd like to have the flexibility to do that. Roger's talking to both Biddeford, Kennebunk, Port about the postings of their roads, so we can simultaneously post all roads at the same time. As you know, we oftentimes have folks that come across Mountain Road, and the city of Biddeford won't post their section of it. Then they'll get to our section and it's posted. So we try to eliminate those as best we can on those roads that happen. So I would like a motion to accept the road postings as presented by by Roger, and to leave the date for posting up to town staff.
That's what we did last year.
I believe it was, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Motion by Jason, seconded by Phil. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries.
The next thing I have is the budget validation referendum that we received from RSU 21. I would like to get a vote and to sign the warrant as presented and provide you signatures to be placed on the warrant.
Okay, looking for a motion to sign the RSU 21 budget warrant.
So move.
A second.
Motion by Velma, seconded by Tom. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries.
Just a comment on those, the RSU Finance Committee started work on the budget today. They're going to be working today, tomorrow, and Wednesday morning from 7:30 until at least 11 to try and get that budget at least pretty well finished this week.
Did they see any white elephants in the room on the budget or?
The only thing I've heard is that ED 279, which is the contributions that come back to the districts.
Yes, our funds.
Yeah, the funds from the state. RSU 21 is seeing a reduction in that, so I won't know what those numbers are until they present them, but that certainly will have an impact on our contribution to the RSU. And as you recall, I think last year's budget was $53 million. So they have a lot of work to do, and hopefully they keep that under their thoughts when they're setting the budget.
Okay. All right, approval of payables. Motion by Jason, seconded by Phil. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Down. Before we go into a motion for the executive sessions, anybody have anything else? Okay, I'm looking for a motion to go into executive session per MRSA 4056A, discuss employment status of a part-time employee.
So move.
Motion by Velma, seconded by Jason. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.